The perfect assassin's strike. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the city below. From the rooftop, Lyra could see everything: the flickering streetlights, the empty streets, and the shadows that moved quietly in the night. She was invisible, like a ghost. Her black suit blended into the darkness, and her movements were silent, calculated. She had done this 1,000 times before. She was an expert. No one ever saw her coming. Her target was a human, a man who had been marked for death. He was supposed to be dangerous, but he didn't know what was coming. Lyra had been hired to eliminate him, and she would do it swiftly, without hesitation. That's how she worked: fast, clean, and with no room for mistakes. The man, whose name was Draven, was alone tonight. His reputation had made him many enemies, but none of them had been able to get close enough to do what Lyra was about to do. She had been tracking him for days, learning his patterns, waiting for the perfect moment. Tonight, everything would end. Lyra crouched down, peering over the edge of the building. She could see Draven walking down the street, his face hidden in the shadows of his hood. He didn't seem worried, too confident, too sure of himself. He didn't know that an assassin had him in her sights. Lyra's fingers brushed the hilt of her blade, a small, deadly weapon coated with poison. It was her favorite light, fast and lethal. She had the poison custom-made, designed to paralyze a human in mere seconds. It worked quickly, taking away strength, then movement, then life. It was perfect for someone like Draven, who had no idea what was coming. She checked the position of the windlight, just enough to carry her scent away. She took a deep breath and readied herself. He was getting closer. Now was the time. She stood, moving gracefully from the rooftop and down, a narrow alley, staying hidden in the shadows. Her heart beat steadily, calm and steady. She had done this 100 times, and there was no room for error. As she neared the street, she crouched behind a stack of crates, watching as Draven came closer, his footsteps slow but purposeful. Her eyes narrowed. This was it. One strike, and it would all be over. With practiced precision, Lyra moved out of her hiding spot. She approached from behind, silent as the wind. Draven was just a few steps ahead now, unaware of the death that followed. Him. She slipped closer, the distance closing fast. Lyra's breath quickened, but her movements never faltered. She was almost there. She could feel the adrenaline in her veins, but she kept it controlled. The world seemed to slow as she raised the blade in her hand, aiming for the back of his neck. One clean strike, and it would be over. Then something happened. In a flash, Draven turned. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist before she could strike. Lyra froze, her heart pounding in her chest. How had he known? How had he moved so fast? His grip tightened, and for a split second, she felt an unfamiliar wave of panic. Her training kicked in immediately, and she twisted her body, trying to break free. But Draven's strength was unreal. His fingers seemed to burn through her skin. Holding her wrist in place, Lyra tried to pull her arm away, but it was no use. He was too strong. And as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected. There was no fear, no surprise in his gaze. Only cold certainty. "Not bad," Draven said, his voice low and smooth. "But you're not the first to try." Lyra's mind raced. She had never failed before. What was going on? She had studied him. He was just a man, a human. So why was he so strong? And why hadn't the poison worked? She felt the blade in her other hand, ready to strike again. But Draven's grip was like iron. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. He was controlling everything, and Lyra had no way to escape. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Draven continued, his voice colder now. "You thought you could kill me, but there's something you don't understand. His grip tightened even more. Lyra winced, but she refused to show weakness. She wasn't going to beg. Draven's face remained impassive, but there was something. In his eyes a strange, unsettling gleam. "I'm not just human." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had heard rumors, whispered stories, about people who weren't fully human, but she hadn't believed them. She was an assassin. She didn't deal in fantasy. She dealt in facts, and the facts said Draven was just a man. So why was he telling her this now? "You think I'm like every other target," he said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. "But you're wrong." Suddenly, the grip on her wrist loosened, and she stumbled back, her mind still trying to catch up with his words. Draven took a step toward her, and for the first time, Lyra felt a flicker of fear. He wasn't the man she had been hired to kill. He was something else entirely. Her heart raced, but she held her ground, refusing to back down. This wasn't over. She wasn't finished yet. She still had her blade, still had her skill. But now, she had a new question in her mind. Who was Draven really? And what kind of target had she just walked into? The mysterious blood Lyra's pulse raced as she stumbled backward, her mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The man she had been sent to kill wasn't just another target. There was something about him, something wrong, something that didn't fit. She had been trained for years to kill quickly, efficiently, without hesitation. But now, as she stood there facing Draven, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a mistake. Draven watched her, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no smugness, no arrogance in his expression, only something deeper, something she couldn't quite read. The way he moved almost effortlessly, with a grace that felt unnatural, kept her on edge. "What are you?" Lyra finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't expect an answer, but she needed to know. The man had just caught her. With ease, as if he had been waiting for her, anticipating her every move. It wasn't possible. Humans weren't supposed to be that fast, that strong. Draven seemed to hear her thoughts, as if he had read the very question she had been asking herself. "I'm not like you," he said simply, his voice smooth but laced with something darker. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "I was changed, enhanced. I'm not what I once was. And neither are you, not after what you just tried to do." Lyra's confusion deepened. "Enhanced? What do you mean by that?" she asked, her grip on her blade tightening once more, though she didn't feel as confident as before. She had been sent here to end a man's life, but now she was facing something she didn't fully understand. Draven took another step forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You're an assassin, aren't you? Trained to take down anything and anyone without hesitation. But you're about to learn something new. Something you won't be able to just kill with a blade or poison." Lyra's heart pounded. The words had the same weight as a death sentence, but something about them didn't sit right. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was more like a strange mix of curiosity and realization that everything she had been taught might not be enough. As if sensing her hesitation, Draven reached out and grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Lyra gasped, expecting to feel the burn of poison coursing through her body, but nothing came. She felt no weakness, no numbness. Her body didn't react at all. The poison should have already begun to paralyze her. Instead, it was like her body was immune, almost like it hadn't been affected at all. Draven gave a low chuckle, his fingers loosening from her wrist. "I told you. You can't kill what isn't human anymore." Lyra's breath hitched. Realization hit her like a slap in the face. This wasn't just a fight. This wasn't just a target she could eliminate. Draven was something else entirely, something beyond human. But what? And why was he so calm, so sure of himself? She pulled back, her mind racing. "What happened to you?" she asked, her voice barely audible. She had no idea why she was asking. Was it curiosity, or was it the sudden shift in power that had left her feeling out of control? Draven studied her, his eyes still unreadable. "I was part of an experiment. A project to create something stronger, faster, something that could survive anything." He paused, almost as if choosing his words carefully. They didn't expect it to go this far. "I wasn't supposed to survive the changes, but I did." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of what they meant. Lyra couldn't process it all at once. Her mind had been trained to think in terms of kill or be killed. But now, faced with someone who wasn't entirely human, that simple equation didn't work. An experiment? Lyra repeated, trying to steady her breath. "What kind of experiment?" "Human enhancement," Draven replied, his tone flat. "They tried to push the limits, create something capable of surviving any battle, any injury. But they underestimated me, underestimated what I could become. Now I'm no longer just a man. I'm something else, something more." Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had seen things, terrible things, things she didn't talk about. But none of it had prepared her for this. A part of her still didn't believe him. But the other part, the one that had always prided herself on her instincts, knew he was telling the truth. The way he moved, the way his eyes glinted in the darkness, it wasn't human. "And now you're hunting me?" Lyra asked, still recovering from the shock. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. She was the hunter, not the prey. Draven didn't flinch. "You're part of the reason I exist. People like you, people who only think in terms of kill or be killed, they made me this way. But they never gave me a choice. I had no say in what happened to me. And now, the same people who turned me into this want to use you." Lyra shook her head, trying to make sense of his words. "Use me?" she repeated, her grip tightening around her blade. "For what?" "For the same thing they used me for," Draven said, stepping even closer. "For their war, for control. They've created an army of people like me. And soon, they'll be coming for you too." Lyra's thoughts spun, the weight of Draven's words settling like a stone in her chest. This wasn't just about one man. This was much bigger than her. The mission she had been given, the life she had known, it was all a lie. "So, what now?" Lyra asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "You want me to join you? Help you take them down?" Draven's gaze softened slightly. "I don't want your help, but I don't want to kill you either. You're more than just an assassin, Lyra. You have a choice. You can keep fighting for those who used you, or you can fight with me for something that matters." Lyra stood still, unsure of what to say or do. Her mission had always been clear, but now everything was uncertain. Her instincts told her to walk away, but her curiosity held her in place. Could she trust Draven? Could she trust herself? She didn't know yet. But one thing was certain. Her world had just shifted, and nothing would ever be the same again. That an unlikely escape Lyra stood. Still, the cold grip of confusion tightening around her chest. She had always trusted her instincts, relied on them to guide her through countless missions. But now, standing before Draven, her instincts were in conflict. She had been trained to kill, to strike without hesitation. Yet, as she looked at him, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than a simple assassination. Draven's words echoed in her mind. "You're part of the reason I exist." She had come here to end his life, but now she was caught in a web of secrets and lies that she hadn't signed up for. His eyes, dark and intense, seemed to see straight through her, and Lyra couldn't deny the strange sense of power that surrounded him. She took a step back, her mind racing as her hand instinctively hovered over the hilt of her blade. Despite what Draven had said, he was still a threat. He wasn't human anymore. And if he wasn't human, there was no telling what he was capable of. She couldn't let her guard down. She wouldn't. Not now. Not when everything was still at risk. "You're not what you say you are," Lyra finally spoke, her voice sharp and steady, masking the uncertainty she felt inside. "You've been changed. But that doesn't mean I can't kill you." Draven's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not asking you to kill me, Lyra. I'm asking you to understand." He took another step closer, and for the first time, Lyra felt the weight of his presence, the energy radiating from him. It was as if every step he took shifted the air around them. "You don't understand anything," Lyra shot back, her hand tightening on her blade. "You think I'm just going to stand here and listen to you? After everything you've done?" Draven's gaze softened for a moment, almost as if he were considering something. "I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to be turned into a weapon. But now, I have no choice but to fight for my life. And for yours." Lyra's breath caught. Fight for my life? She was the one who had always done the fighting, always the one in control. Yet somehow, in this moment, Draven's words were making her question everything. She had been the hunter. How had she become the hunted? She could feel the conflict inside her building. Part of her wanted to run, to ignore everything he had said and just complete the mission. But another part, one she had never allowed to surface, was telling her that there was more to this. There was something deeper happening here, something she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the loud sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Lyra froze. She hadn't expected the guards to find them so quickly. How had they tracked her so fast? She glanced at Draven, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment of hesitation had cost her. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. The guards would be here in moments. Draven's eyes narrowed as he heard the footsteps too. "We need to move now," he said urgently. Without thinking, Lyra turned and ran, but not toward the exit. She had no idea where she was going, just that she needed to get away. The sound of Draven's footsteps echoed behind her, but there was no time to worry about him. They had to get out before the guards caught up. They moved swiftly through the alleyways, Lyra's mind racing. What was happening? Her world had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. The mission she had been given, the life she had known it, all felt like a lie now. She had no idea who to trust, no idea what her next move should be. As they rounded a corner, Lyra suddenly found herself face to face with a group of guards. They had surrounded them, their weapons aimed at Draven and Lyra. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. "Drop your weapons. You're surrounded," one of the guards shouted. Lyra's heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. She knew that fighting was her only option. She drew her blade and prepared to strike, but before she could make a move, Draven stepped in front of her. His eyes were locked on the guards, and he didn't flinch. His posture was calm, almost unnervingly so. "You don't need to do this," Draven said quietly, his voice carrying a cold certainty. He raised his hand, palm open, and in that moment, Lyra saw something that terrified her, something in his eyes that showed no fear, only resolve. In a blink, Draven's body moved faster than Lyra could process. One guard went flying back, his body crashing into the wall with unnatural force. Another tried to react, but Draven was already there, his speed so inhuman that it left Lyra breathless. She could only watch as Draven disarmed the guards one by one, his movements fluid and quick. It was like watching a storm unfold, chaotic and powerful, unstoppable. In mere seconds, the guards were on the ground, incapacitated and unconscious. Lyra stood frozen, her hands still gripping her blade. She had seen people fight before, but nothing like this. Draven wasn't just fast. He wasn't just strong. He was something else entirely. Draven turned to her, his eyes dark and focused. "We need to go, now." Lyra shook her head, still processing what she had just witnessed. "You? What are you? How are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away, his gaze shifting toward the exit. "It doesn't matter right now. What matters is that we're still alive." Lyra followed his gaze, her mind still racing. The danger wasn't over. More guards could be on the way, and they were still in enemy territory. But as she looked at Draven, something inside her shifted. She wasn't alone in this anymore, and she didn't know what to make of it. "Come on," Draven urged. "We don't have much time." Lyra hesitated, but only for a moment. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had been a lone wolf, always working by herself, but now, in this strange and dangerous situation, she had no choice but to trust him. She wasn't ready to admit it, but deep down, she knew that Draven wasn't just another target. He was someone she needed to understand. This part builds on the mystery of Draven's abilities while raising the stakes with a dangerous confrontation. Lyra's inner conflict and growing tension with her mission drive the narrative forward, keeping the audience hooked. The revelation Lyra's heart raced as she followed Draven through the labyrinth of alleys and hidden paths. Her mind was still, trying to catch up with the shocking speed and strength he had just displayed. She had always prided herself on being in control, on knowing her target, knowing the mission. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. They reached a safe house, a small abandoned building tucked away in the back streets. Draven had led her here without a word, his movements swift and determined. Lyra couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. The guards, the fight, her failure to complete the mission. As they entered the dimly lit room, Lyra leaned against the wall, still catching her breath. Draven moved toward a small table, setting down a bag he had carried with him. He didn't look at her, his focus entirely on the task at hand. "What are you?" Lyra asked, the question she had been avoiding since the moment she had seen Draven's unnatural abilities. Her voice was a mixture of frustration and confusion. She had spent years perfecting her skills as an assassin, and now she was facing something that defied all logic. Draven turned to her, his expression unreadable. He was silent for a moment before he spoke, his voice low and steady. "I wasn't always like this. I used to be human. But then ... they changed me. They turned me into something else." Lyra's mind raced. "They? Who is they? Who did this to you?" Draven's gaze shifted away, his eyes darkening. "I was part of an experiment designed to create the perfect soldier. They wanted to enhance us, make us stronger, faster, and more resilient. But something went wrong. They pushed too far, and I was the result." He walked toward the window, looking out at the city that lay below. "At first, I was just like you normal. But then the changes began. They altered my DNA, my body, my mind. And I became something else. Something ... not human." Lyra took a step closer, her curiosity overpowering her caution. "What exactly did they do to you? How are you ... like this?" Draven didn't turn to face her. He was lost in his thoughts, his voice distant. "They injected me with a combination of experimental serum and nanotech designed to enhance my physical abilities. The serum was supposed to heal injuries instantly, increase my strength, and even improve my cognitive functions. The nanotech was supposed to bond with my cells, making me immune to toxins, poisons, and even radiation. But the result wasn't what they expected. Instead of creating a perfect soldier, they created a ... hybrid, something that wasn't quite human anymore." Lyra's mind spun. She had heard rumors of genetic experiments, of human enhancements, but never like this. She had seen enhanced Soldiers before, but none of them had the raw, terrifying power Draven displayed. He wasn't just altered. He was something new. Something dangerous. So you're a weapon? Lyra asked, her voice quieter now. She didn't know why she was asking. She was supposed to be the one in control, the one who decided who lived and who died. But here she was, standing in front of someone who had been altered beyond recognition, questioning her mission. Draven finally turned to face her, his eyes hard. I was supposed to be. But I'm not just a weapon. Not anymore. I escaped before. They could use me for their plans. I'm not going to let them control me. Not again. His words hit Lyra harder than she expected. She had always been the one making the decisions, the one who carried out the missions. But now, facing Draven, she felt like the world she had always known was crumbling. She wasn't the hunter anymore. She wasn't in control. He was. You're not alone in this, Lyra said, her voice uncertain, but there was a new resolve in it. They're coming for both of us, aren't they? The people who did this to you. They won't stop until they have you back. Draven nodded, his jaw clenched. They never will. They want to take control of every enhanced human they create. And now that they know about you, they'll come after you too. You won't be safe. No one will. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She had always worked alone, never needing anyone else. But now, in the face of a threat this large, she realized how alone she truly was. The world she had known was gone, replaced by something darker, more dangerous. And she couldn't escape it. I didn't ask for any of this, Draven said, his voice raw with emotion. I never asked to be a weapon, to be used for their war. But now, it's up to me to stop them, and I can't do it alone. Lyra stood, in silence for a moment, her thoughts in turmoil. She had been trained to kill, to strike without mercy, without questioning. But now she had a choice. A choice she had never imagined. She could walk away, forget everything she had learned, and go back to the life she had known. But something inside her told her that would never be possible again. She was already involved, already in too deep. And, in a strange way, she couldn't turn her back on Draven, not after everything he had revealed. What do you want me to do? Lyra asked, her voice firm now. There was no more hesitation. She had made her choice. Draven studied her for a long moment, his gaze calculating yet appreciative. I don't need you to fight my battles, but I need you to help me take them down. Help me destroy the organization that created me, and anyone else they've turned into a weapon. We have to stop them before they can do it to anyone else. Lyra took a deep breath, her mind made up. Then we'll fight together. We'll destroy them. Together. Draven nodded, his eyes softening for the first time. Thank you. As Lyra turned to face the window, her heart settled into a new rhythm. She had no idea what was ahead, what kind of future lay in store for her and Draven, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of purpose. She had been a weapon, but now she was choosing to be something more. And for the first time, she wasn't doing it alone. This part deepens the bond between Lyra and Draven, revealing more about Draven's transformation and the stakes of their fight. Lyra's internal struggle continues, but by the end, she makes a choice that will set her on a new path. Unlikely alliances. Lyra stood by the window, staring out at the city below. The lights of the streets were dimmed, casting long shadows over the empty roads. Her mind was far away, lost in thoughts of what Draven had revealed to her. Everything had changed. She had been a tool of death, a silent hand in the shadows, but now she was a part of something bigger, something she hadn't signed up for. She wasn't sure what to think of Draven's words. The man, or whatever he was, now had been changed, manipulated, and experimented on by people she didn't know. But those people had become her enemies too, and now they were coming for her as well. She wasn't just the assassin anymore. She was a target, and she needed to survive. A movement behind her broke the silence. Draven walked into the room, his presence as imposing as ever, but this time there was something different about him. He seemed less like the dangerous creature she had been sent to eliminate, and more like a man with a mission, a purpose. "You're still thinking about it," Draven said, his voice soft but heavy with understanding. Lyra didn't turn to face him. She kept her eyes on the city, trying to steady her breathing. She had always been good at keeping her emotions hidden, but now, with so much uncertainty in the air, it felt like everything was unraveling. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore," she confessed, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "Everything I've known, everything I've been taught, none of it makes sense anymore." Draven stepped closer, his footsteps light but purposeful. "I know it's hard," he said, his voice steady. "The world's not what you think it is. You're part of something now, Lyra, and there's no going back. But you're not alone. We have to stop them, together." Lyra finally turned to face him, her gaze sharp. "I've never worked with anyone before. I don't know how to trust anyone." Draven's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Lyra saw something in his eyes, something human. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to fight with me. We don't have to trust each other right away. But if we want to stop them, we'll have to trust that we both want the same thing." Lyra thought about it for a moment. She had spent so many years working alone, never relying on anyone, never having to make alliances. But this time, things were different. She couldn't do this alone. They were both being hunted, and if they didn't work together, they might not survive. "I'm not sure I can be part of a team," she said, her voice steady, though there was a hint of doubt in it. "But I know what it's like to be used. I know what it's like to be a tool in someone else's hands. And I don't want that for anyone else." Draven's eyes locked onto hers, a flicker of respect in his gaze. "That's all I need to hear." They were interrupted by a sharp knock on the door, followed by the sound of a voice from the other side. "Lyra, Draven, are you in there?" Lyra's heart skipped a beat. It was a voice she didn't recognize, but it was one of the last things she wanted to deal with right now. She glanced at Draven, who had already moved toward the door with a quiet urgency. "Stay here," Draven said, his tone firm but low. "I'll handle this." Lyra didn't have time to argue. She crouched down, drawing her blade just in case. Her instincts screamed at her to be ready. Whoever this person was, they weren't here for a friendly chat. Draven opened the door just a crack, peeking out to see who was on the other side. His face went from calm to alert in an instant. "What is it?" The voice from the other side was muffled, but Lyra could tell it was a woman's voice. "We've got trouble. They've found us. The organization they're closing in. We don't have much time." Lyra's grip tightened around her blade as Draven's face hardened. He stepped out of the room and closed the door behind him, leaving Lyra alone in the dimly lit space. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't been in a proper fight since the encounter with Draven's guards, but now it seemed like trouble was coming straight to them. Moments later, Draven returned, a grim look on his face. "We have to move, now. They know we're here, and they're coming." Lyra stood quickly, slipping her blade back into its sheath. "How do you know?" Draven's expression darkened. "I've dealt with them before. They have eyes everywhere. We're not safe here." Lyra didn't hesitate. She was ready. Her instincts were sharper now, her body more attuned to danger than ever before. She had never felt more alive, even though everything around her was falling apart. "You said we need to fight them together," Lyra said, her voice firm. "Well, I'm ready." Draven nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "I knew you would be." Without another word, they moved quickly through the building, Draven leading the way. Lyra stayed close, her senses alert. They had no time to waste. The enemy was closing in, and Lyra couldn't afford to make any mistakes. They had to survive. As they reached the exit, Lyra's mind flashed back to everything she had been taught, the way she had always been alone, the way she had always trusted only herself. But now, standing next to Draven, she realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. They were in this together, and together they stood a chance. "Let's finish this," Lyra said, her voice low and determined. Draven gave her a nod of agreement, and with that they slipped into the night, ready for whatever came next. In this part, Lyra and Draven's alliance strengthens as they prepare to face the organization that altered Draven. The tension rises, as they must move quickly to avoid capture, and Lyra starts to accept that her path has changed forever. Confrontation. The cold night air rushed past as Draven and Lyra moved through the shadows, keeping to the narrow alleys and hidden paths of the city. They had been on the move for hours, avoiding the eyes of the enemy. The organization was close. Now too close, and Lyra could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. They were being hunted, but this time they weren't alone. For the first time, Lyra felt the weight of her choice to fight alongside Draven. But the fear wasn't the same. There was strength in knowing she had someone beside her. They both had one goal now: survival and the destruction of the organization that had created Draven. Draven glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the dimly lit streets. "We're getting close," he muttered, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "They'll be here soon." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. "Where are we headed?" "A safe house," Draven replied. "It's an old contact of mine. He can help us, but we need to move quickly." They turned a corner and approached a seemingly abandoned building. The door was cracked open, just enough to allow them inside without drawing attention. Draven pushed it open, and they slipped in, closing the door behind them. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of dust and neglect. The building was silent, except for the faint creaking of the floorboards beneath their feet. Lyra's senses were heightened, every small sound making her alert. It felt like a trap, but there was no time to second-guess themselves now. Draven led the way, his pace quick and sure. Lyra followed closely behind, her fingers twitching near her blade. She was ready for anything. And then she heard its footsteps. Outside, heavy and deliberate. "They're here," she whispered. Draven froze, his body tense. "Stay quiet. We don't have much time." Lyra didn't need to be told twice. She pressed herself against the wall, blending into the shadows, her breath shallow as she waited for the next move. The footsteps grew louder, closer now. Lyra's pulse quickened as she glanced toward Draven. His jaw was clenched, his eyes focused on the door. The enemy was close, and there was no way out. They would have to fight. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a group of heavily armed soldiers stormed in. The sound of boots on the floor was deafening as they spread out, surrounding the room. At the front of the group stood a tall figure someone Lyra recognized instantly. "Lyra," the man said, his voice cold and familiar. "I knew you wouldn't stay out of it for long." It was Marcus, an old associate of hers, a man from her past. He had once been an ally, but now he stood in the enemy's ranks. The sight of him sent a chill through her. How had he ended up here, working for the very people who had turned Draven into a weapon? "What do you want, Marcus?" Lyra asked, her voice steady despite the unease that gripped her. "I'm not your target anymore," Marcus smirked. "You never were. But him," he nodded toward Draven, "he's something different. Something we can use." Draven's eyes darkened, his expression shifting into one of anger and defiance. "I'm not your weapon," he growled, stepping forward. "And I won't be used again." Marcus's smile faded, and his eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." He motioned to his men. "Take them down." In an instant, the soldiers lunged forward. Lyra's instincts kicked in, and she drew her blade, slashing at the nearest soldier. She moved fast, her body flowing with practiced precision, as she parried a strike and spun to land a powerful blow. But there were too many of them. She knew she couldn't fight them all off by herself. Just as she was about to strike another soldier, she saw Draven in motion. His speed was unlike anything she had ever seen. With a fluid, almost effortless motion, he disarmed one soldier, throwing him across the room like he was nothing more than a ragdoll. The others hesitated, their confidence faltering at the sight of his strength. Lyra watched in awe as Draven moved with the precision of a predator. His fists connected with the soldiers, and each hit seemed to land with devastating force. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a weapon, a force of nature. But even Draven couldn't take on a whole squad alone. Lyra's eyes darted around the room, looking for a way out. She couldn't let him fight alone. Not now. "Draven," she called, dodging another soldier's strike. "We need to get out of here. Now." He didn't look at her, but his movements slowed for a brief moment. Lyra took that as a sign. She darted toward him, cutting down a soldier who had gotten too close, and then grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back. Exit. But as they turned to leave, Marcus stepped into their path, his face twisted with anger. "You think you can just walk away?" He spat. "You're coming with me." Lyra's heart raced as she stepped in front of Draven, blade raised. She wasn't going to let Marcus take them. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "This ends now, Marcus." Marcus chuckled darkly, his eyes filled with cold amusement. "You're out of your league, Lyra. You've always been out of your league." With that, he lunged toward them, but before Lyra could react, Draven moved like a blur. He grabbed Marcus by the throat, lifting him off the ground with ease. The force was enough to make Marcus gasp for air, his face turning red. "You don't control me anymore," Draven said, his voice low and dangerous. Marcus struggled against Draven's grip, but it was clear he wasn't going anywhere. "Let me go, Draven," he choked out, his voice weak. Draven's eyes hardened. "I'm not the one you need to worry about. It's them." He gestured toward the soldiers, lying unconscious around the room. "You've been working for the wrong side." Lyra watched as Draven dropped Marcus to the ground, his body crumpling like a ragdoll. The fight was over, for now. Draven turned to Lyra, his eyes meeting hers. "We're not done yet. We need to keep moving." Lyra nodded, a small sense of relief washing over her. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Together, they made their way toward the back exit, ready for whatever came next. Their alliance had only just begun, but they were already stronger together than they had ever been apart. This part of the story escalates the action with an intense confrontation, showcasing Draven's strength and Lyra's willingness to fight alongside him. It sets up the stakes for the larger battle ahead, as Lyra and Draven face enemies both old and new. Ask ChatGPT. A new beginning. The night was still, but there was an undercurrent of urgency in the air as Draven and Lyra hurried through the back alleys. The chaos from the safe house was already behind them, but their mission was far from over. They had escaped Marcus and his soldiers, but Lyra knew that the organization wouldn't give up so easily. They had been marked, and no matter how far they ran, the shadow of their enemies would always be behind them. Draven's footsteps echoed in the silence, his form a steady presence in front of her. Lyra followed closely, her mind still racing from everything that had happened. She had expected this mission to be simple, quick, and efficient, just like all the others. But nothing about Draven, or the situation they found themselves in, was simple. She had come here to kill him, but instead she was running alongside him, fighting against the very people who had created him. The thought seemed almost absurd, but as she glanced at Draven, she saw a different man from the one she had been sent to eliminate. He wasn't just a target anymore. He was someone she had to understand. As they reached the edge of the city, Draven slowed down, his eyes scanning the horizon. The moonlight cast long shadows across the empty streets, but in the distance, Lyra could see the outline of a hidden base, a place where they could regroup, make their next move. "We're almost there," Draven said quietly, his voice betraying none of the exhaustion that Lyra felt. "We need to lay low for a while. The organization will be looking for us." Lyra nodded, her thoughts still caught on the conversation they had had back in the safe house. She had learned so much about Draven more than she had ever wanted to know. But even now, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something he wasn't telling her. The changes he had gone through, the experiments that had turned him into what he was now, it was all so much for her to process. They reached the hidden base, an old warehouse tucked away on the outskirts of the city. The building was abandoned, the windows boarded up, but there was a quiet security to it. Draven pushed open the door, and they entered, the space dimly lit by a few flickering lights. Inside, a man was waiting for them. He was tall and wiry, with short, dark hair and a wary expression. As soon as he saw Draven, his face softened, and he stood up. "You made it," the man said, his voice rough. "I wasn't sure you'd be able to slip past them." Draven nodded, his gaze hard. "We've got no time to waste. We need to get moving, find a way to take down the organization for good." The man glanced at Lyra, his eyes sizing her up. "I see you've got company. You trust her?" Draven didn't hesitate. "Yes, she's with me." Lyra bristled at the implication in the man's voice. She wasn't anyone's company, but now wasn't the time to argue. They had bigger problems to deal with. The man didn't say anything more, but motioned for them to follow him deeper into the warehouse. They moved through the darkened space, the air stale and cold. There were stacks of crates and old equipment everywhere. It felt like a place where people went to hide, to regroup, and that's exactly what they needed right now. Draven turned to Lyra, his face serious. "You need to understand something. This fight, it's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone they've done this to. Everyone they've changed and turned into weapons." Lyra met his gaze, her brow furrowed. "I've already seen what they've done to you. But you can't expect me to just believe everything you're telling me. You said you weren't the only one. Who else is out there?" Draven didn't answer right away, his eyes distant. He seemed to be thinking, weighing his words. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter. "There are more. People like me, and they're out there, hidden. But they're not ready to fight. Not yet. They need to be free of the organization's control before they can make their move." Lyra's mind raced as she processed what Draven had said. There were more like him, more enhanced humans, living in secret, waiting for a chance to escape. They weren't just victims. They were survivors, just like Draven. And if they could unite, they might stand a chance against the organization. "We need to find them," Lyra said, her voice firm. "We need to find these people, and we need to take down the organization, all of it. For good." Draven nodded, his eyes steely. "That's the plan. But we'll need resources, a place to regroup, and time. The organization's too powerful. But we can't let them keep doing this to people. We can't let them turn more humans into experiments." The man who had been leading them stopped at a table, pushing a few papers aside. "I've been working on a plan. We've got some intel on where they're keeping their research facilities. But we'll need to move fast. They've already sent out a few teams to track you down, Draven. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. And we don't waste any more time. We make a move now, before they have the chance to get there. Hands on us again. Draven met her gaze, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Respect. We're in this together, Lyra, and we'll make sure they never hurt anyone again. As Lyra stood there, her mind racing with the possibilities, she knew that this wasn't the end. It wasn't even the beginning, but it was a start. The fight ahead would be long, hard, and filled with danger. But she wasn't going to run anymore. She was ready to fight for something bigger than herself. With Draven by her side and the growing resistance they would build, there was hope. The world wasn't what she thought it was, and the mission she had been given wasn't what she had imagined. But in this moment, standing in the dim light of the warehouse, she knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning of something far more powerful than any assassin's mission. In this part, Lyra and Draven form a stronger bond, deciding to unite their efforts and fight against the organization that created Draven. Their plan to free others like him sets the stage for the future, and Lyra begins to accept her new role as part of a greater cause. Ask ChatGPT